Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Sum Up Series. This is a new recurring series on the unspoken essentials. It is not a different podcast or show. It's simply the host's favorite moments of the past 4 episodes provided for the listeners who have limited time. With that being said, I want this to be the resource for those people that are working more than 40 hours a week that can invest, an hour, maybe an hour and 30 minutes for one episode. More so, I want them to still get that information, knowledge, and wisdom that other people are able to afford. This is for you, and I hope you enjoy it. In the first episode of TUE, we talked about where the podcast is heading, me wanting to give back to my community, having meaningful conversations means a lot to me, and a personal story about my brother getting laid off from work and how it's motivated me. I also just want to give back to my community. I know a lot of people from where I come from, which is North Hills is a little city in the San Fernando Valley, greater Los Angeles area for those that aren't in Los Angeles, that don't ultimately know what they want to do. They come out fresh from high school, just graduated virtually due to the coronavirus recently, or COVID-19, and they want to follow the routine that everyone wants them to do, which is to go to college, but they find themselves not knowing what they want to study. They find themselves creeping slowly into debt or just in limbo. They feel like the valley is just going to be where they end up, and that's going to be the end of it, and that's far from it. I want them to know that there are many more opportunities than they think. I want them to know that whatever they're feeling and whatever they're going through currently with trying to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their life is only one small segment and one section of what is to come. Also, I just find it cool being able to sit down with someone from like a different profession that I would ever end up being and learning what they do day to day, how they do specific things that would normally be tedious, like their taxes and how they make money and what percentage they have to give for like management, if they have a manager, if they're like a YouTube creator, if they work with networks and different people that connect them with sources like branding and sponsorships and creating advertisements, a YouTuber in general. Like, that's just awesome. Like, figuring out how they work day to day and their work ethic, that's priceless to me. I also just find inspiration in meaningful conversations. It's kind of cheesy again, but I feel like a good conversation goes a long way rather than any form of money. One of the other things that I said I will talk about is a very inspirational story, and a story that's really close to me currently is actually going to be for my brother. He's currently dealing with some stuff in his career field, and unfortunately, due to the pandemic and everything that's going on, was let go. But that opportunity, I considered an opportunity, came at the right time, right place. He was able to actually invest all of his money that he's saved up recently, money that he also had for his 401k, which is his retirement plan, unfortunately, had to come out. And he's been having this passion, to follow his own side business, his own hustle. And I guess this is the time that allows him to actually push for it. He's investing in machines. He's investing his time into this, my mom wants to consider it a hobby, but into this business, I wish nothing but the best for him. He wants to be a mobile car washing and detailing company, giving services, for people in our community and even outside of it to have a nice car, good looking, clean car for the summer, and it really struck a chord in my heart, because it just goes to show how self-driven he is, how self-motivated he is, and how much work ethic he carries with himself is beyond me. He works almost 16-hour days with his family around him, motivating him and supporting him, which I'm so proud about, because having that amount of support is super difficult, and he's doing it regardless if it's just 1-2 clients a day. It's a beginning, and it's a great foundation for what he's creating. So for my brother, if he's listening to this, I appreciate you. I appreciate your work ethic, your drive. It inspires me to keep on doing what I'm doing, and it doesn't go unnoticed. In the second episode of the Unspoken Essentials, we spoke with Jeff Gross and covered a lot of topics of Foley mixing and audio engineering. But what really stuck out to me was the discussion of the 10,000 hour benchmark that needs to be met to become a master in a craft.
It goes along the lines of it takes 10,000 hours to really master a particular craft, that you do. And I think you spend so much time from a 10,000 foot view working with audio that for me, at least my experience was that I felt very comfortable, sitting in front of in front of a console with a microphone and somebody doing recording for a Disney, show, or sitting in front of an editing bay, trying to, cut some dialogue, or going out in the world and trying to record something, like a real life sound effect. So I think if you have a love for it and you're open-minded, you can you never know where you're going to land. That was actually my point. Was a lot of people go into profession, like they want to be a producer, and they're so set, they're hell-bent on that. They're like, this is what I want to do. And then their eyes get opened up to another aspect of sound and they fall in love with it, or they just never even knew it existed. So I think it's really about having an open mind and being able to pivot when you find something you love.
I feel like that's very difficult now for like the younger generation, because I think they're driven by other people's form of success that they can't find their own, which is great. That's why we're like having this important conversation, is that they can find that at a young age, whereas you with world music, you were exposed to something that's so unique, so different from your normal metal, or even what was the other band that you spoke of? The
Billy Joel, the Go-Go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like it's being exposed and having those different experiences that do build success and like greatness within us. We just kind of have to be able to read the room, I guess. You know what I mean?
Well, there's a lot. Okay, so unpacking that a little bit, there's a lot of stuff in that concept, because reading the room is another skill that I think everybody should do. I think everybody should take a psychology class, because you deal with so many different type of personality types, and knowing how to work with them if they're difficult is an important skill set on its own right. So that's not in any creative field, you're going to come across people that are difficult for whatever reason. There could be they had a bad day, they have an ego issue, they're not confident, so they have to project overconfidence. So I think backing that up to today's youth, I think there's a lot of, every kid gets a trophy that has kind of gone on through their life as they've grown, and now they think that everybody's special. And I came out of college, and USC is a great example, because I think I'm not knocking the school at all, but I think they have a reputation for people coming out of that school and thinking like, I just graduated and I should be directing a movie. And it's like, well, you need to learn your craft, and you need to be humble about what you do. Exactly. I think a great attitude in life is just don't be an asshole. Exactly. Know that so I think there's an entitlement issue that we're seeing, and as opposed to a humility that I think is important to working with a variety of people. When you're humble and you don't know everything, and you're open-minded and you're hungry and you want to learn, you get more out of life experiences.
I agree. Yeah, that's I have to read the room a lot, and I have to be able to like look body language. I'm studying currently a minor in psychology, so I actually which is oddly enough, even though we're doing audio over the phone and all that stuff, if I were to have done it in person, I have to be able to read people's body language to see what they're comfortable with. If I'm confusing the candidate or person just by me asking a certain question a certain way, maybe I need to rephrase it, stuff like that people don't really pay attention to, I feel like would be a really big key for especially teenagers nowadays, because they haven't been able to express themselves like face to face in an interperson interaction, because of like social media and stuff like that. So they kind of retain and hold in all of that emotion and what they're feeling, and they just kind of go off on like a Twitter thread, you know what I mean? Whereas if you're in person, you can't really hold it in, because then it's just gonna eat at you, and then you're gonna just explode.
Right, and I think that's communication is important, and I think that we're living in an era where there's two different there's two different camps. There's the camp that people grew up, online, and that's how they communicate. And then there's the camp of, no, listen, just pick up the phone and call me, and let's have a conversation, or let's get together and well, maybe not these days with COVID going on, but let's get together and have a cup of coffee and sit down and talk about this. So whatever this is, So I think the ability to communicate is huge, and for people, the kids coming up today, to understand that it's okay to have a conversation. Sometimes you don't want to go on a rant and say things. Words are powerful. You don't want to say things. You don't want to put something out there that you can't take back.
I agree. Yeah.
And that can jeopardize a future job. That can jeopardize a future relationship. It can do a lot more damage than you think. Words have repercussions.
In our third episode, we spoke with Jason Gervais about ways to improve ourselves, how important mental health is, as well as the difference between renting, leasing, and owning a property. Actually grow,
Grow, yeah.
Just grow.
And it's not gaining more information, my brain's gonna, grow and expand. It's, information that's helpful to do something for you or do something for others.
Yep, exactly.
And that's what he was getting at. But yeah, that's a great story about, his superpower. Now, I still wouldn't mind flying, but
exactly.
that'd be
of course, no flights,
that'd be a cool, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to turn down being Superman,
exactly.
But at the same time, the ability to read more and consume more information would be a pretty cool gift. And a lot of people, I know reading's not sexy. It's not something that people are like, yeah, hey, you read? Me too. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's be friends.
Yeah, I know.
But reading's super important.
Yeah,
it's super important. Especially when you're working on creating the best version of yourself.
Of course. Yeah, I feel that 100%. I'm actually gonna flip the pivot a little bit here. Is it cool if we talk a little bit about real estate?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Cool. I actually just wanted you to break down, because I know, and it's not in a negative manner or anything, or negative light to anyone that would take offense if they would. It sucks that you were offended, but for those people listening that don't know the difference between rent, lease, and own, do you mind breaking that down for them?
Sure. So renting, a lot of people are renting. Okay. So renting is when you pay someone else for the use of property. Okay. So you find that mostly with apartments, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody owns and it doesn't matter. It could be a single family home, or it could be 500 different apartment units where, 500 different people live in. Okay. You exchange money for the use of the property. So we're in Los Angeles. This is going to be crazy, but the average one bedroom apartment is about $1,950 a month, $1,950 a month.
That's insane.
Let's just round up and call it $2,000.
Yeah,
right?
Basically, give or take.
$2,000 a month for a one bedroom apartment. That's renting. Leasing is practically, real estate wise, practically the same thing. Leasing, renting, it's the same thing. You're exchanging money for the use of something else for a certain amount of time. And the time can be anything. The time could be a day. The time could be 20 years. It's whatever you and the other person agree on. Okay.
Okay.
Now, most of the time when you're out there, you're going to find leases or rentals for 1 year at a time. Commercial real estate, you're going to find 5, 10, 15, 20, 99-year leases, things like that. Usually commercial real estate's a longer term lease.
Okay.
But typically for you and I, where we're looking to live somewhere, it's usually year by year. Okay.
Okay.
Owning is when you buy a property yourself. And for most people, you don't buy it outright. You don't say, hey, here's a big bag of cash. I'd like to buy that place right there. We get a loan, right? Yeah, we finance it somehow.
Yeah.
But here's the deal, man. Interest rates, which interest is nothing more than the money that you pay to borrow money. So interest rates right now are ridiculously low.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're below 2.5% right now. And so basically what I'm telling you is the cost that you're going to pay to borrow that sum of money to buy a place is really low. You got to remember, it wasn't that long ago, 10 years, where rates were 5, 6, 7%. And we're in the
you said they're under 2.5%?
Yeah, they're in the twos. And, you know, of course, that depends on credit and, you know, what institution you're going to.
Yeah,
so
of course.
I don't want anybody quoting me on rates.
No, of course not. Yeah. Anyone doing that, they're in the wrong spot. You got to go to a professional, like a sit down investor.
Yeah, I'm not a mortgage. You know? I'm not a mortgage bank. Go to a mortgage person for that. Yeah. I'm just telling you, it's roughly about 2.5% right now.
Yeah, that's and
the cost of money is almost nothing.
And even
there's some people.
Sorry, go
ahead. Cardone, for example, he's adamant about not owning your own property. And, you know, that's him. If you want to follow his logic, absolutely go for it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's for different types of people.
Yep.
I like to own my main residence. My main residence I own. I like to know that if the bottom drops out, I got a place to live.
Yep.
You know,
ultimately.
And you know, I did something a little bit different. I did a 15-year mortgage. So basically I have to pay off the entire amount with interest within 15 years. But the cool thing is I own it outright.
Okay.
Now, I do give up some benefits of carrying a mortgage. However, in the beautiful state of California where we live, that benefit went away. So it was something called SALT, which is when you pay your interest on the money that you borrowed, you used to be able to write that off against your taxes. And you can no longer do that above a certain dollar amount. It does suck. And here's the real pain. Oh, I almost said a bad word.
You're good, dude. I mean, like I told you before, you go ahead.
Here's the real pain about it.
Yeah.
Is because we're in California, I believe, don't quote me again, but I believe it's $450,000. If your house is worth more than $450,000, you can no longer write off the interest that you paid on your mortgage. Which, if you're in California, dude, you can't even get a refrigerator box to live in for $450,000. You know?
Yeah.
So that pretty much anybody in, well, I guess you could go out to the middle of nowhere and find some places. But if you're in LA proper,
yeah,
Riverside, Orange County, you're not going to find San Diego.
You want a good location, you're not
going to find anything for less than $450,000.
Yeah,
so that pretty much that ability to write off that interest it's not working anymore. So basically, I don't know how much more you want to know, but I'm a proponent of owning your main residence.
Yep.
And don't rent.
I was just about to say that. My next question was, what do you not even recommend? What do you think would be the best decision for someone that wants to live by themselves, or like even with friends or roommates or anything like that? What do you think is?
Don't rent.
Okay.
Renting, you're basically paying someone else's mortgage.
Yep.
And thank you, by the way. I appreciate that. But
of course,
you got to do what you got to do. You got to have a place to live. And
I
whether
agree.
you live in a car or you live in an apartment, you need a place to live.
Yep.
So I'm not dissing anybody that's renting. However, you're not creating wealth for yourself. You're creating wealth for somebody else.
Yep.
And I promise you, from experience, your first house that you buy will be the hardest one you ever buy. And then after that, they become easier and easier and easier. So bust your ass, get your first house, then leverage that house to buy another, and then buy another, and then buy another. You become the landlord. I don't even know if you could say that nowadays with our political climate, but you become the owner, renting it out to other people, and you make money.
I was, so I actually have, and this is out of my own experience, bringing it to you. These guys can listen to it. I'm okay with that. I already asked my wife; she's cool with me talking about it. Just gotta go through the wife, of course.
Yeah, right.
So we've buckled down, and oddly enough, you were talking about, this comes back to the whole elephant segment that we had earlier.
Right.
I went through all of our expenses. That's why we didn't start late. We actually started early, but I started later than I would like. I went through all of our expenses, took everything down, calculated how much we roughly make at an average, and just cross-referenced it and seen how much it would cost, how much we should be paying or spending each day if we wanted to buy a home within the next 1.5 to 2 years.
Yep.
So that way it's easier than, I even told her, I was like, if I tell you we have to survive off of $35 each day, and to some people that's minuscule, that's so little, but for us, we want to own or have a property before we actually become 30. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Our goal is to actually have, whether it's, so I was actually going to ask you about this too. Have you heard of park homes?
Park homes?
Yeah, it's kind of like trailer homes, but they're trying to they're trying to advertise it a bit differently, but basically, like, you know, trailer homes.
Yeah.
She's starting to look into those, and they're looking I'm not gonna lie, they look very, you know, they beautify them up a little bit. It's in the Calabasas area. It's a little bit nicer. But I told her, even though we own the technical home, we are renting the land.
Yeah, you're renting the spot.
Yeah,
and by the way, that can get pricey.
There's no control over it.
You get locked into a term or a certain time period, but even with that, there's all these other fees that go on top of it. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just go in with your eyes wide open,
of course,
to look at all those fees.
Yeah, definitely, because you're paying that. In our 4th episode, we spoke with Manuela Torres-Orejuela. We covered some perspective of the music industry, being a master at a craft without the need for validation, and how music allows us to progress through different stages of our lives.
Connection with. And honestly, I had lost myself a bit. I was doing a lot of inner child work. I don't know if you noticed, like, my content in the last year or so was really bright, colorful, kind of playful.
And oddly enough, before I forget again, I hate forgetting thoughts. So the loss of someone kind of rekindled your what you had to get rid of to adapt to your new setting. So by that I mean you basically are bringing back how you were when you were younger with, like, music wise, and then you lost it in Florida, came back a little bit. And oddly enough, I'm kind of picking up all these connections because they were your home from Florida. And then the loss of someone that's so important from that group kind of rekindled your true nature of childhood. You know what I mean?
So when you do inner child work, you, like, I don't know, I went deep far back, like almost like elementary school. And I remember I had a therapy session like a few months ago, and I was meeting a new therapist. And so she asked me to talk about myself, and the session was an hour. I ended up talking for 2 hours. She just let me have a double session. And she said for an hour and a half, I talked about just elementary school. And then the rest of the half hour, I talked about the rest of my life. So that's, like, just to emphasize how much I was processing the last year in terms of literal childhood. And then you think about when I was a teenager and I got into, like, more rock acts. I think that's the period that I'm working through now. You know, I'm kind of coming back to that. And so the music that I'm making is also just because I'm working through so much. And music also kind of goes hand in hand with how I work through stuff. The music that I'm making now, honestly, is so completely different from the one single that I've dropped, right? I've dropped demos that sound like, I don't know, like coming of age indie, you know, folk tracks. And then I've dropped I Don't Mind, which is like a pop lullaby, like super polished.
When you released that, I kind of, I'm not expected. I had a feeling it was going to be bright, but then the one that you showed me recently, oof. Like, it just, I don't want to talk about it. I can't wait until
you can't.
It comes out. No, it's so good.
Okay.
It's so, like, I remember when I told you that it brings Billie Eilish vibe, and you were so happy. I was like, I hit it on the nail. I hit the nail on the head. Like, it's so good. I keep listening to it. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I'll be showering and then I have it on. Like, yeah, it's really good.
That's so cool because I think that's one thing that scares me a little bit about music. I hate that I think about it, but, like, when I make a song, I love it, but, you know, if it's too anxious, is it replayable? Do people want to hear it often? But I think, you know, you got to have music for every emotion, every scenario. And so I think currently I'm making kind of anxious music, but I think a lot of us are super anxious right now. And so maybe it'll resonate.
Yeah, definitely. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode of the Sum Up series. If you want to reach out to me and let me know what you think, make sure to follow us on Instagram at the Unspoken Essentials. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, we'd appreciate a review. And if you're listening to us on any other platforms, please make sure to share us with your friends who missed out on the last couple of episodes of the Unspoken Essentials. Ultimately, have a great day, and we'll catch you on the next one.